so welcome to our 11th Challenger Lecture Series event presented by Hinckley Yachts and Hinckley Yacht Services and supported by 11th Hour Racing. Tonight, we are delighted to have an accomplished panel of female sailors to speak on their experiences in life and sailing. A reminder to our guests that we can't get to all questions, but we will try to get to as many as we can. The chat room is open for comments, but please keep it smooth sailing in there. You can use the Q&A function for all of your questions. As always, I want to acknowledge Dr. Charlie Shoemaker for being the inspiration for this lecture series. Charlie has been a great mentor to so many sailors in this community. Thank you, Charlie. Mark your calendar. Our next Challenger lecture is on Tuesday, April 20th. We're hosting a conversation during Earth Week led by science communicator Danny Washington with guest speakers Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and 11th Hour's own Hillary Catoon and Tom Burnham. Also, be on the lookout for important information from Sail Newport for spring and summer schedule announcements, summer boat storage, regatta announcements, and member renewals. Thank you to our sponsor, Hinckley Yachts and Hinckley Yacht Services. While Hinckley builds mostly powerboats these days, Hinckley is proud of their sailing heritage, dating back to 1928. They're excited to be involved and sponsor this event. Hinckley Yacht Services in Portsmouth, just up the bay from Sail Newport, had the opportunity to host American Magic during the summer of 2019 through the launch of their training boat, the Mule, to Defiant and Patriot. With one of the largest paint booth facilities on the East Coast, Hinckley Yacht Services Portsmouth attracts refit projects from near and far. Both of Hinckley's Portsmouth paint booths recently completed a full refurbishment and upgrade. As one of the leading facilities in the country offering the new AWL Grip HDT high definition paint technology, the crew at Hinckley is slated to complete 60 refit projects by the end of the winter season. Hinckley Portsmouth is also the only fully certified waterfront Yamaha and Mercury Marine dealership for outboards and all major marine inboard diesel and IPS engines in the region. Hinckley recently announced their latest model, the Hinckley 35. For those who love the classic lines and timeless style of a Hinckley, but crave the capabilities and performance of the latest in cutting-edge outboard propulsion, we are delighted to introduce the Hinckley 35. With 10 boats on order, we're excited to see her make her debut on the water this spring. Learn more about Hinckley's product lines and yacht services by visiting hinkleyyachts.com. Thank you to our supporting sponsor for this lecture and our next lecture focused on ocean health, scheduled for April 20th, 11th Hour Racing. This organization works to mobilize sailing, maritime, and coastal communities with an innovative approach to inspire solutions for the ocean. Driven by a philosophy of local solutions to global problems, the organization harnesses the power of the sport through three primary areas of engagement. Sponsorships, such as the Amoca 60 11th Hour Racing Team, grantees including Sail Newport's Pell School program, and ambassadors, such as local sailor Jamie Haynes. A reminder that registration for our summer youth program is still open with spots available in our Little Guppies, Keelboat, and Dinghy programs. Use the QR code here to look up more information. Gifts made tonight via the QR code here will directly support Sail Newport's Brooke E. Gonzalez Advanced Racing Clinic. This is a nationally recognized clinic and regatta hosted at the start of the summer season named in memory of Brooke Gonzalez. Gifts of any size are greatly appreciated and help to support costs not covered by registration fees. You also have the option of making a gift via PayPal when using the QR code here. We're grateful for all who are able to donate to support Sail Newport tonight. If you have any questions about making a gift, you can contact our Director of Development, Eve Formisano. Her contact information is listed here. Now on to our panel. I'm excited to announce this panel for tonight. As a leader in community sailing, Sail Newport has the responsibility to promote greater diversity and inclusion within the sport of sailing through increasing pathways to recreation and competitive sailing for people of all backgrounds. It is our hope that tonight's discussion will lead to a greater understanding so those who are in a position on making decisions for recreation and competitive sailing programs will embrace and seek out diversity of its sailors, as well as inspire young girls and women to get involved in sailing at every level. Tonight, our program is moderated by Amy Kemp. Amy is a past president of Sail Newport. Amy is the past president of Sail Newport, our board of directors, and she is the chairperson of Sail Newport's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. She is a communications specialist with more than 25 years of experience working in the gaming, government relations, and higher education spaces. Amy has become a dear mentor of mine while working on our DEI initiatives at Sail Newport. I'm so excited to have you lead this panel tonight. Amy, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Emily, and thank you for those kind words. Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge the passing of one of Sail Newport's founders, Dr. Robin Wallace. Dr. Wallace was a mentor to all who share the passion of sailing and will be remembered for the countless hours he spent planning, organizing, and running regattas for the sport we all love. No one has put more time into bringing sailing events to Rhode Island than Dr. Wallace. His dedication to the sport and to the state is legendary, and for that, we are deeply grateful. One quote by Dr. Wallace that resonated with me since the first day I heard it, and I think it's quite relevant tonight, and it's this. He said, when you are on the water, everyone is equal. He deeply believed that sailing was the great equalizer, that no matter your socioeconomic background, your race, or your gender, everybody is equal on the water. So this evening and every day, we thank Dr. Robin Wallace for his service to our community and to sailing and for getting people out on the water. And I know he would be thrilled to see the absolutely amazing and accomplished women gathered for our conversation tonight. So let's get started, and welcome to the Challenger Lecture Series celebrating women in sailing. I am honored to moderate tonight's conversation and humbled to share the Zoom screen with all of you. I'd like to start by introducing our amazing panelists. If I were to try to list each of your accomplishments, we would be here until next week, and I would still miss many of them. And so I will ask that each of you tell us a little bit about yourself and then what drew you to the sport of sailing. So we'll start with Joan Porter, who was part of the first and only all-female America's Cup crew in 1996 aboard Mighty Mary, and who was also part of the 97-98 Whitbread race and sailed with the Young American team in the 2000 America's Cup. Welcome, Joan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. And just as a, who am I? I sail pretty much anything. I started with dinghies, worked my way up to maxis, and then back down to dinghies. Did the Olympic campaign with Hannah Sweat and Melissa Purdy for the 2000 games. Didn't quite get there. And now I'm sailing on the IC-37s with Linda and doing some team racing when I can and sailing with my daughter on a bullseye. So kind of bringing it all around.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to the sport of sailing and this amazing career that you continue to have?
My parents had boats when I was a kid, and I never really loved it until I got into racing as a teenager. And then I thought it was a great way to get away from my parents. And from there, just kept going. And it's funny as I look at my daughter, I'm like, I don't want to push this on her, but it can be a lot of fun.
I'm sure. Great. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce local business owner, New York Yacht Club member, and a proud ensign owner, Dr. Deb Harris. Welcome, Deb.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Actually, I'm a Newport Yacht Club member. Not okay. That's okay. Across the bay. I am a veterinarian by profession, and I am a casual sailor. I have spent many hours on many different types of boats. I race on other people's boats for fun, and I sail my own boats, just kind of day sailing to cruising sort of thing. Maybe some boat camping here and there, but I have older classic boats that I love just for the beauty of their designs.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll turn to Joan's teammate on that America's Cup team and someone who has been a leader in the sport of sailing on and off the water for her entire career, Linda Lindquist-Bishop. Welcome, Linda.
Thanks so much, Amy. It's great to be here with everyone on the panel and all of you. How did I get into sailing? My dad had an old wooden Lightning, and my brother and I had to pump it out every morning, and I was really scared and didn't want to go to sailing school and fake that I had a stomach ache. And then when I was 14, a friend gave me his laser for the summer, and my parents had to come out in the water and get me after dark, and that's really what changed everything for me. So yeah, I went from small boats to big boats like Joan. I ended up going to Santa Cruz 70 from a dinghy, and then came out to the East Coast and went into the industry. I've been able to work in the industry. I became an expert in low friction bottom coatings, very glamorous, painting the bottoms of big boats, and then worked for Yachting Magazine. So I had a lot of fun in the industry as well as racing for many years. And 95 got to sail with Joan, and then sailed with Terry Hutchinson for 10 years on a Far 40 all over the world, which I never dreamed sailing would take me so many incredible places. Raced a Milgus 32, a lot of travel with that, and now back in Newport sailing with Joan again. So full circle, and also sailing Shields on Wednesday nights. And very fun. We started a Dragon 95 remote control sailing fleet this winter. So we've been freezing down on the dock thanks to Brad and Sail Newport, and I've never been so bad at something and yet had so much fun. So I just wish I grew up on video games so I knew which one.
I'm sure you're going to master it, as you have mastered pretty much everything you have attempted in your life. Next, someone who needs no introduction to this crowd, Sail Newport's own program director, Kim Hapgood.
All right.
Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I'm really very honored to be part of this amazing group of women speakers tonight, and looking forward to sharing ideas and experiences with everyone. My background, I started in sailing when my father threw me in a sunfish on a little lake in Indiana. And from there went to, further up to Belmont Harbor and Chicago Yacht Club, and before moving across the Great Pond to England, where I really got into the sport from a competitive standpoint, did a lot of I-420 sailing as a junior, and then came back to the States and sort of did the college post-collegiate experience. And after spending many years working in higher ed administration down in New York City, realized that the thing I was enjoying the most was coaching Columbia's sailing team, and an opportunity came up. I ended up in Florida running the U.S. Sailing Center in Martin County, and found a real foothold in sailing management, program management, which is what I've been doing for the last 30 years. And for me, it provides an interesting contrast to the competitive sailing that I've done. Amazing opportunity to be able to share the sport with young students, college-age students, older students, and sailors of all different types. And so looking forward to talking a little bit further about those experiences with everyone tonight.
Great, thank you. And we are so glad that you found your way to Sail Newport, for sure. And next and finally, our sailing director for the New York Yacht Club, Lynn Lynch. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. Yes, so I've been with the New York Yacht Club going on 5 years now. I'm starting my 5th year. Previously with St. Francis Yacht Club, previously with Chicago Yacht Club, previously with Columbia Yacht Club. The trick is to leave before they figure it out. But I'm from Chicago and started sailing when my family got a sailboat when I was about 7, the Mighty Bag of Rags, and I liked it and it was fun, but I think I really fell in love with it when I started sailing in high school. And then the obsession really started when my first sailing job ended when I was 16. And my mom said, hey, enjoy that summer. You're not going to get a lot of them. And I said to myself, challenge accepted. And so 25 years later, still in the industry and wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. So we'll get right into some questions that I have. And I'd love for all of you just to weigh in wherever you would like. So you are certainly all trailblazers who have broken barriers in what is perceived as a male-dominated sport and industry. You know, as you were coming up in the sport, either on the water side or on the shore side and the management side, who did you look to as your inspiration? Was there other female sailors that you looked to as inspiration and to guide you into that path? Or were there not enough or female sailors at the time? And so who did you turn to as inspiration, as mentors? So Linda, why don't we kick it over to you to start that?
My first mentor was my father because he got me on a sailboat. That's a good question. I knew I wanted to sail, and it was really in big boats that I had the mentors, and they really ended up being the people that would let me sail on their boats, because there were a lot of people that wouldn't back then. So I'm so grateful for every man who had a boat that let me sail on it back then. And I'll be honest, I got a lot of resolve and motivation for the people that didn't let me sail on their boats to keep going. So I both served in my forward moving trajectory. And I'll just mention Dawn Riley. You know, she was probably the first one that I knew that had done big things in sailing. So it was great to see what she had done. And then many women after her. I will say that the Women's Keelboat Championships back in the late 80s was the first time that I really sailed with and against really competent women. And that was a big eye opener for me. So I'm very grateful for those regattas back in the day.
That's great. Thanks. Kim, why don't you share who you were inspired by as you were coming up?
Sure. So, you know, I think it was tough. My early mentors and the people that I looked to who inspired my interest and passion for the sport were predominantly men. You know, from sort of local sailors at the yacht club to, you know, watching who was on the stage in terms of competitive sailing. But it's interesting, you know, as time marched on, and particularly in the 80s, and fully into the 90s, when you started seeing some of the, whether it was women's AC teams and such, there were those moments. So Isabelle Tissier, the French solo sailor, you know, even though that's the last thing that I would ever choose to do in terms of sailing around the world alone, I like sailing with other people. But just watching her take on what had to that point been such a male-dominated part of the sport and crush it was really, you know, really inspirational.
Great, thanks. And we talked about this the other day, about these silent mentors. And Deb, you brought, I think it was you and Joan who brought that up, the silent mentors who gave you that chance to sail in the boat and to prove yourself. So Deb, maybe you can share an experience of, you know, the first time you were invited to crew on a race boat.
Wow, the first time I was invited to crew on a race boat was, I think it was a Flying Scot, and it was October in Duxbury, Mass, and it was freezing cold, and I didn't see the sense in this at all. And so I kind of huddled under a trash bag in the bow and was moving ballast. And so that didn't really pique my interest. My mentors were actually people that were partners, part of my life that taught me how to sail, and then showed me the validity of being in a group of other sailors, join a yacht club, find people that have the same interests as you. And that was when I started getting on boats that were a whole lot more fun. They had like keels and big sails and lots of crew. So that was a lot more pleasant.
I can imagine. And Joan, I think that, having raced on the all-female America's Cup team, people look to you and Linda now as kind of their inspiration. And how does that work for you? I mean, do you see the role that, since you were such a trailblazer in the sport, what role do you play and the other people on this conversation play in being mentors to young sailors coming up and young women sailors coming up?
I think the biggest thing we play is to encourage people to use the opportunities that they're given. It's a mistake to say that we're going to get you your opportunity or someone's going to give you an opportunity, but you have to make your opportunities and really try and, if you get your foothold in, keep going until you can't go any further. Because for me, it's been a lot of what I call silent mentors, people who have given me an opportunity to have a spot on the boat, and it's mine to lose. So keep going, keep trying, keep pushing. And sometimes it's not pretty, but you keep going. And if you don't make it, you don't make it. But more times than not, you'll surprise yourself at what you can do and what you can learn, and ask the questions, And I encourage people to ask questions of us of, what is it that makes it happen? And it's really the seeking of information and learning what you need to do on the boat, and then having the ability to, once you're comfortable in your spot, look around and make sure the person next to you is comfortable in their spot. And as a mentor in the sport, I don't know, it's a tough one because I don't necessarily look at myself as a mentor, but I suppose I am. I just hope I can encourage people to try. You never know. I didn't think, when I was in high school, I didn't think the America's Cup was something I would be doing. I didn't think I'd be doing a Volvo. I really wanted to do an Olympic campaign. I really wanted to do that. And that was actually the last piece of what I got to do. So you just have to keep trying.
Mm-hmm. I love that what you just said is you can't expect people to present these. You have to present you with an opportunity. You have to take it. You have to make your own opportunities. And it's clear by the success that each one of you have had, you've created your own opportunities. And Lynn, I'd love to turn it over to you. Maybe you can talk about the opportunities that you created to get to where you are today, the top of the field as a race director and a program manager for New York Yacht Club.
I think as important as to create them is to recognize when they're popping up. So it might not be as the path might not be so straight, but anytime I was working anywhere, if there was an education opportunity or a volunteer opportunity, or even if it was something I hadn't tried before, if it was engine maintenance or, painting the bottom of a boat. I remember the first time I painted the bottom of a boat. I had never done it before. And it didn't seem like I needed to know how to do it to teach sailing, but it was just sort of saying yes a lot to many different things until, the dots sort of connected themselves. And I was lucky enough to, I said yes, the more people said, here you go, try this. If you're willing to scrape the barnacles, maybe you'll get on the boat next time. Kind of a deal. So I found that for me.
Linda can probably give you lots of tips on how to paint the bottom of a boat.
I'm sure.
Go to her there.
People painting is my big tip.
Very good tip, for sure. So, when people think of sailing, it's the competitive on the water aspect of the sport that comes to mind first. And it's certainly the most visible. But in many ways, it's the smallest piece of the puzzle. It takes a whole lot of hard work and people before, during, and after for a team to be successful on the water. And Lynn, I think you exemplify just one of the many pathways in careers in sailing. And you've given us, you've shared a little bit, but can you give us your path and give advice to somebody who may be interested in not so much on the competitive sailing side, but the other aspects of sailing, all of the opportunities that exist off the water?
Sure. I feel like I have had two very distinct time frames in my career. The first being teaching sailing and running sailing programs. And there was some racing component to it with the high level groups in there, but most of it was just, can you organize a program? Can you make sure the hiring is all in place, right? There was knowing the industry, but also knowing just how to organize things. And then the second part of the career is in risk management, which I've been doing for the last 13 or 14 years, and running waterfronts. And so while I facilitate many other people racing, my weekends are spent behind the line, making sure that happens and making sure the lunches are out and the paperwork is collected. So, I mean, there's from teaching sailing to running programs to volunteering for a race committee, there's just an amazing amount of opportunities off the water, but that still get you in that sort of wonderful atmosphere of racing.
That's great.
I wouldn't want to get in a race boat and against any other person on the street.
Neither would I.
Over and go back.
And Joan, you've been part of several programs on and off the water. Can you share some of your experiences and the roles that you have played, particularly on the onshore side and being part of the team that doesn't necessarily compete on the water, and some of the opportunities that you see for women in those other aspects of sailing?
So one of the things that a lot of comments come up of, oh, how come there's not another women's team? And how come there aren't women on the America's Cup programs? But I think you need to look a little deeper, because there are women on those programs. Some of them are in quite important jobs. If you ask the designers, the engineers, the people who are doing all the artificial intelligence work, all the mechanics, they're as much of a team member as the people who are actually sailing the boat, because without them, the boat's not leaving the dock. Mm-hmm. Young America, I was fortunate. I went down with the program working on winches, deck gear, and running one of the boats. The boat literally didn't leave the dock unless I said it was ready to leave the dock. So was I part of the sailing team? In a sense, yes, because when we had two boats in the water, I was on one of them. Was I part of the team? Absolutely. And that to me is part of being a team. It's not just the flash pieces that, the sailors get the big notes, but it's all the other people that make it happen. So marketing, management, everybody. Without them, the program doesn't move forward. Mm-hmm. And there's many people there that do jobs that there's no way I could do. And they look at me and go, there's no way I could do that. And that's fair enough. That's what a team is about. It's about sharing the load and making sure that you have the right people in the right place doing the job. As Linda from 95, she spent a tremendous amount of time on airplanes and on the boat, trying to do two jobs at once, which was impressive. I still don't know how she did it. She'd join me for runs on Monday morning and have already been up for hours working, and then spend all day on the boat and then continue. It's part of the team. The whole group is the team.
Great, thank you. And I think that's such an important part of the conversation that isn't brought up quite a bit, or quite often, or quite enough. There is a lot of attention that is paid to the all-female teams, as there should be. It is certainly a celebration, but oftentimes some of the real heroes are the ones that are working behind the scenes, as you said. So thank you. Kim, I would love to ask you a question. In your role as program director for Sail Newport, you have a front row seat to young girls getting on the boat and getting on the water, many for the very first time. And it's amazing. I know my niece went through the program, and I can remember how proud she was to show me that she knew how to put the mast in the boat. She didn't want any help. She was like, I'm going to do it. And then her second favorite thing was, of course, tipping over and then being able to get back in the boat, usually with me in it. So, but she absolutely loved it. And so how do you foster the enthusiasm and the confidence in those young girls when they're that age, and to encourage them to continue on past maybe those summer programs into maybe teen years, high school, college, and beyond?
Well, it's interesting. I think that we are starting to see some wholesale change when it comes, sort of looking at young kids coming into the program, both girls and boys, and people aren't making the distinction of she's a girl sailor, he's a sailor. It's simply that here are these kids that are coming to learn to be sailors. And one of the things, Joan, I think talked about how sailing is so uniquely positioned as a sport to provide some pretty special opportunities in a very level playing field. No, it was Robin, our great mentor, Robin. So I think that's one of the things that is, so impactful, is that girls are able to come in and they're able to do it right alongside their peers, whether they're other girls or they're boys. And that confidence that they get from the experience, the successes that they have, the fun that they have, helps bolster their belief in themselves and their capacity to do, whether it's to do within the sport or to do in other things in life. And, we're seeing a leveling of the playing field when it comes to instructors. The positions that instructors, we're hiring. We're not saying, it used to be that really, if you were a male coach, you were more likely to find success in finding high-end race coach positions at clubs and organizations. And now, because girls are growing up, they're spending as much time at the helm, learning all aspects of the boat. They're not just sort of relegated to being crew. And that's consciously, I think programs are being really conscious to make sure that happens, that everybody is learning the front of the boat and the back of the boat in equal measure. And so they have a confidence, they're getting the skills, they're going on, they're progressing to becoming successful, coaches and instructors, and hopefully that continues and plays out afterwards. Look at the results from college nationals the last couple of years, and there are female mixed boats, in the co-ed sailing that used to be very dominated by male skippers and female crew, and now there's a tremendous number of female helms that are driving in both divisions and doing, taking their teams all the way. And so I think it's slowly changing. I think it's because programs are being very conscientious about making sure that everybody learns to be the whole sailor, that you're not just learning an aspect of the sport. So, yeah.
Well, we are very grateful that you continue to run world-class programs for every level of young sailor at Sail Newport. So thank you. And Deb, I think I relate to you the most because I guess I would characterize myself as a casual sailor too. And I remember it was a challenge to find places where I could go and get on a boat, even if it was just for, a local regatta, Tuesday night or a Wednesday night regatta. And I would love to hear from you on what is your advice for somebody who is a much more casual sailor, may not have the experience that others have, but what advice can you to us casual sailors to get on more boats?
Get to the yard, help out, bring a lunch, feed people, be social, and get on any boat that looks safe. Okay, always that caveat, make sure it looks safe. But basically, I would get on anybody's boat. And I got to sail a number of different types of boats. I'm not saying I excelled at all of them, but, you become familiar with the thread, the physics of sailing a boat. And you also become conversant with people and you understand what they're looking for. When they say, do blah, 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 it's immediate. You go and you do, and you are the crew. And so basically you're there to assist, and you make that very plain that you know that you're there to assist. And what you get in return is you get experience. Okay. And if you are that type of a sailor where, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and I'll stick my finger in that, or, something yucky or things that are a little unpalatable sometimes. If people know that they can depend on you to do those things, you're more likely to get asked than someone who's going to just sit on the bow and coil rope, So just participate, jump in with both feet. Don't be afraid. Trust the people you're going out with, but experience every kind of sailing situation that you can.
Thank you. And I actually have a follow-up question for you and for Lynn. So I think that there is a perception that you must belong to Newport Yacht Club or you must belong to the New York Yacht Club in order to be able to volunteer or to find those opportunities. That I think is probably a myth. But how can people, Lynn, if you're looking for volunteers for people to help out at the next regatta, where do they go to learn about that?
Each club is a little bit different. I've worked at a couple places where it was literally as easy as just calling and saying, I'm interested in helping. And we would jump at the chance to have another person to train up on flags or recording or, whatever the case was. And then in other circumstances, it's, maybe you took a U.S. sailing race management class and you met a few people that way, right? I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of a nudge and say, I could be interested in this and you sort of meet other people. There's so many ways. One of my first volunteer positions was as a able-bodied on a adaptive sailing race, and that was fascinating to sort of get in. And it was kind of like I just went to an open house and was in the right place at the right time. And so there's, don't be afraid to look around and cold call or show up at the dock, with a sandwich in hand. We picked up people like that more than once for sure.
And Deb, is that the experience that you have seen as well? Just show up and put your hand up?
Well, it's also not necessarily just club situation. You have friends that have boats. My brothers had boats, and so you have this whole network of people that may or may not be attached to a formal club, and it may not be racing. Okay. I learned how to sand boats and, do glass work and, all those different types of things, change the outboard and blah, blah, blah. And so all of those situations, you meet more people. And then, of course, the cruising milieu, everyone is dependent upon their peers. And so you meet a lot of people that way. I didn't join a club until I'd been sailing for probably 15 or 20 years. And it was a totally different kind of experience. But it was just really, really interesting to think that, sailors are community type people. They like other sailors. If you say, wow, what's that? I've never had anyone say, oh, shut up and go away. They always want to tell you if you're interested in what they're doing. Okay. Well, people ask me, it's flattering. I want to tell you about my boat and what I'm doing. Okay. So a lot of times, if someone has the temerity to just walk up and say, that's interesting, what is that? You're going to stop and tell them. So I tell people, don't be afraid to extend your hand because sailors will always extend it back.
That is wonderful. And I am going to throw it to Kim because I do think that this is a perfect opportunity to give Sail Newport a little plug about ways that people can get involved who have no sailing experience, even as an adult.
Right. So, well, the nice thing, whether it's, certainly we have extensive opportunities and programs at Sail Newport for adults who, whether they've got no prior experience or lots of experience, and the same for kids as well. But you'll find in communities around the country now, community sailing programs that are open to the public, whose fundamental mission is right there alongside that of Sail Newport's, which is to provide access that's hopefully affordable and convenient to the sport. And so I think adults, kids, families, go to the U.S. Sailing website. There's a database of programs around the country that are open to the public. Great way. So no matter where you are, you can look up, by zip code. And if you're certainly here in the Rhode Island area, we're fortunate. We have 4 different community, outright community programs from up in Providence down to URI, Sail Newport. And all of us are striving to do the same thing, which is bring people into the sport who, whether they've had that prior experience or not. And no matter what their age and means, it's important. The sport has so much to offer in terms of growth for the individual that it's worth, taking a stab and a chance at trying it.
And that includes these amazing adult sailing lessons at Sail Newport.
Yep.
So make sure anybody who says, I don't know how to sail, start at Sail Newport, and Kim will hook you up with the best instructor. And next thing you know, you will be able to rent a J22 and be able to race with everybody else on the bay on a Tuesday and Wednesday night and over the course of the summer. I'd like to bring it back to something that we are seeing a little bit more in the sport of sailing, and would love everybody's opinion. But in particular, I'm looking to Linda and Joan, because I think you are perfect to be able to answer this question. You were both on the first and only female America's Cup team. Since then, we've seen a handful of other all-female teams, including on the Volvo Ocean Race. And now we're starting to see a drive to require integrated crews, and specifically the IC37s and Sail GP. And I know you both race on the IC37s and do extremely well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on if this is a good policy, or is it well-intended but perhaps a little misguided? I'll start with you, Linda.
Well, like many things, there's different ways to answer that question. Providing that, we IC37's mandate, I think Lynn said, 2 opposite gender people. So for most of us, that means 2 women on the boat. I think it's fantastic because it does get more women into the sport. For those of us that sail big boats, there isn't a lot of integration. So it creates opportunity. There's definitely a place for all women boats, but I think Joan and I have both found that we enjoy the mixed boats, and that's really the next iteration. All women boats gets more women on the water, more women with experience. And then I really do believe the next progression is that when we all sail together, and that's the exciting part. So yes, Sail GP just announced that they'll be adding training women and providing women. They'll be over the course of the next few years, and that's very exciting because the access into elite and high performance sailing is narrow, as we see with the Cup. We had 27 women sailing in our program, and there were 0 in the America's Cup on the boats racing. So there's a place for it, definitely.
And Joan?
I look at this a couple ways, because I'm not your average sized female. So I'm not 150 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm close to 200. So I take the spot of a male on the boat. You're not gaining a couple extra pounds for anybody by having me on the boat. So I look at it as, yes, I am one of the females on the boat, but I also know in my heart of hearts they could find someone a hell of a lot lighter to give more space on the weight limits. So I have to take it that I'm there in part because of my skill. Personally, I prefer when it's more organic, that you're part of the team because of your skills, your ability, your personality, you fit on the boat, you like the people. To me, that's a really good place to be, because then there's no second guessing why you're there. I find that boats with the mandated you need 2 or you need this, sometimes, depending on how the boat's managed and run and what people are looking for out of those positions, will depend on how the boat feels. And sometimes it isn't quite as comfortable as you'd like because there's some resentment, and that's unfortunate. So personally, I prefer, just the organic, let's go sailing, let's get together as a team and let's go. But in getting more people in the water, there is a place for it. And it certainly helps in that sense, because once you've introduced yourself to the crew, it's yours to make your spot, because the next boat may not have that requirement. But if you're part of that team, then you'll still have your spot.
And Amy, one data point on our IC37, while they say 2, we won the North Americans with 4. So, you know, that says a lot that those were the best people to bring on that boat, and we won. So, and one was a 16-year-old girl. Our youth was a girl as well. So
that is fantastic. So Lynn, I would love to hear your thoughts on this idea.
You know, we had chatted about that this is a goal of world sailing, right? To try and get parity, I think in Paris, of 50-50 of race management. So officials, so measurers, umpires, judges, everyone. And I always worry about the law of unintended consequences of while you might be providing opportunities for the women, you might be taking away opportunities from men as well, and requiring the 50%. When instead of just providing more access points and training and making sure that the opportunities are available to everyone, and then picking the best people. You know, I would hate to be chosen for anything and then wonder in the back of my head, was I chosen because I'm qualified enough for this, or because I'm fitting, the requirements. So again, I understand it, but I think it's such a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. Well, one, I don't think you would ever have to worry about that. You are certainly more than qualified for any position in my book. Deb, I would love to hear what you think about this idea. You've raced on integrated boats pretty much this entire time. So do you see this as a good policy, or as Lynn said, there may be some unintended consequences?
Well, that's always the problem with policy. Okay, is it necessary? It probably was necessary just to start the conversation. And I think this will probably be something that it'll have its time, okay, and then it will go. Because what it will do, okay, it will feel enough women in enough positions, okay, of excellent competition, that now you will have a log and an inventory, so to speak, of women who can race at that level. And so then I think after this, the boats will probably be chosen on a more organic basis, like what pretty much everybody would rather do. But for right now, to identify those women, you have to basically find some way of saying, yeah, this is who we have to choose from. I like sailing on integrated boats because I think, as we've all been saying, there are some things that women do, as well as men, maybe better. And so why not? It just makes a lot more sense to have people that have the same mindset, that feel the same way about each other, about competition, about the philosophy of sailing. And that's kind of how you make up your crew, so there's no friction.
Right. Thank you.
But yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things that come and go.
Well, and Kim, I'd love for you to wrap up this discussion.
Yeah. So I was thinking back to, opportunities that I took or that I've seen other women take in getting on boats that have historically been all male. And I think the thing that was instrumental for me and for those other women in finding success was you get on the boat and you may well be there because you're the token female, but that if you can establish yourself, and it goes back to just having some confidence, and when you don't know something, don't hide that. It's like other speakers this evening have said, you got to be comfortable asking questions, learning. If you show that interest, if you show that desire and passion to make yourself better, and you put in the effort, you're going to find success, and you're going to find, and I think more women doing that and creating those opportunities for themselves and then showcasing themselves be every bit as good and competent as their male counterparts just helps start tipping the scales so that we do move towards that more organic parity. I'm in agreement with others that right now, particularly at the high end of the sport, because there's such ingrained, male, preference for selection, that it will take, let's try and consciously increase the number of females participating, but they're going to prove their worth really quickly. And then it'll be that much easier for somebody who's setting up a a team to say, I'm simply taking the best sailor, irregardless, in their ability to fulfill a role on the boat, irregardless of their gender. Which is going to take a little while, but have some confidence, get in there, even if you're the only one, and just do. And you'll be amazed. Pretty quickly, they stop looking at you as the only female on the boat, and you're part of the team.
I do. I agree with that. Absolutely. I remember that from my own experience where I was given an opportunity to race on a swan, and there was some hesitation and some questioning by some. I was the only female on the crew, and it took a few times being out there, and then they were like, hey, you can actually do this. And that gave me the confidence. And I was like, and of course that resolve of proving them wrong definitely played a role in making sure that I worked just that much harder to prove that I could do it. But once you get there, then it's seamless, which I think is great.
Another thing, if I could add, at some point, when everyone realizes how great we all are, it's going to start working against us because we'll be capped at how many women we can on the boat. So, I mean, it's just at some point, once all the opportunities are there, we can just start picking people based on their skill level instead of
all
the other stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that, Linda?
I said I'm looking forward to having to deal with that problem.
Yes, that would definitely be a good problem to have, right? We will look forward to solving that one. As I look over to the chat, there is a question. Oops, hold on. Let me just find it back there. I apologize. There was a question from someone. All of you have in some way grew up, you had family members who introduced you to the sport of sailing. What ways can we encourage and find young girls who may not have family members that have a boat or have an interest in sailing? And I know with our 4th grade program at Sail Newport, we have the opportunity to introduce a lot of people to sailing for the first time. Right. And so love for Kim, how can we attract those girls who in our community who just don't have families who sail, and they might not know where to start?
Well, and a significant portion of first-time participants in our youth programs come in from families with no background in the sport. And I think that's about starting by selling all of the non-competitive attributes of why the sport is so cool in terms of, learning. And this is what we emphasize with the 4th grade program. It's learning to work with others, a team, learning how to communicate in challenging conditions and in an environment where you aren't necessarily comfortable and familiar with everything going on around you, learning to have the confidence that you can do this. And so I think those are things that parents, I think, hope to see their children have an opportunity to learn and build on those skills. And so if we can sell them and encourage them to understand that sailing in better than any other sport provides an avenue to developing those skills and those sort of interpersonal strengths, it's a good way to attract people into it. And and by the way, it's the coolest thing. You're out on the water, sort of working with Mother Nature and with your friends and having fun.
That's great. Would anybody, Joan, you're a mom, and you sail with your daughter very proudly, but she has as you to look towards as someone who can be a mentor. But what would you say to other families or other, maybe your daughter's friends who don't know anything about sailing? How do we attract them to the sport?
Some of it's just asking them to come play with you on your toys. We've taken some of Kate's friends and their moms out on the Bullseye for just an afternoon sailing around the harbor, and they've loved it. They've had a good time. Is it something that they necessarily want to do 24/7? Maybe not. But then when their daughter asks, can I go to sailing camp as opposed to whatever other camp? At least there's a benchmark there. I think it's important just to, if you have an opportunity to take someone on the water, get them on the water. Because otherwise, how would you know? And it may not even be a kid. It may be somebody's, one of your coworkers. Just go out, muck around on the boats, because as much as it kills me, Kate is not doing sailing camp this year. But we're still going to go sailing and still go play on the water. And as long as she's happy and safe and enjoys being on the water, then I think I've done my job. If she wants to go race at the level I did, that's up to her. Right now, her thing is swimming. So more power to her. You know, everybody's got their place. But I think it's about getting people to the water and showing them that it's accessible. I think programs like Sail Newport and like Connecticut Island Sailing Foundation is another good one, where it's just getting people to muck around on the water will probably bring people back to the water more than some of our more competitive racing programs, where kids get frustrated and wash out because they're not the killer, you know, they don't have that killer instinct. They really don't want to go race in Opti. They really just want to hang out with their friends, but that program isn't there for them. But that's the program they're in. So I'm a big advocate of just getting people on the water, boats in general.
That's great. Thanks. And Deb, what do you think about that? How can we get you're a business owner here on the island. I'm sure you see lots of families. And so how do we attract the broader community into sailing, and I would say into Sail Newport in particular?
Well, I think that the opportunity is richer and broader than it has been for many, many, many years. I mean, you think about when we were growing up, sailing was not anything that I ever anticipated doing. You know, we had little power boats and whatnot, but sailing was very, very sort of almost a snobby kind of sport, you think about it, right? Well, now we have all these wonderful community programs that are available. And I think that we could showcase them even better if we maintain our shoreline access and people actually get a chance to walk down to the bay and see the water and watch what goes on and get some kind of admiration for and you know, yearning to be on those boats. You know, I have so many friends that say, oh, as a young child, you know, I walked down to the water, I saw this beautiful schooner, and I knew from then on in, I had to be involved. So I think that a lot of it is we have to make sure that people actually can see it, okay, to know it's there, to want to be part of it. And then, yes, of course, drag everyone that you can out onto your boat, you know, canoes and boats, you know, sailing and, you know, kayaks and anything to get people on the water, to engage with nature, to be self-sufficient, and to have, you know, an idea of the sport that's out there in all of its aspects.
And I do think that is the beauty of the Sail Newport fourth grade program with the Pell School, which is sponsored by 11th Hour Racing. For many of those students, it's the first time they've had access just to the water, let alone being able to go out on a boat, and it's inspiring to see them.
It's incredible. I mean, we didn't have that when we were kids, you know? So it's a really great idea to get kids out there at an early age while they're fearless. Because fourth graders, I mean, I wouldn't be out there sailing an Opti and tipping it over in May. More power to them.
Oh, great. I'm cognizant of time, but we are almost finished. But I did see in the chat, and I wanted just to bring this up, because earlier we talked about mentors and people that inspired us. And I'm not sure who this is from, but apparently there is an interview with Martha Parker, who I'm sure all of you know, in Wind Check magazine, talking about many of the issues that we spoke about tonight. And I know for someone who was the casual sailor and often would see Martha on the race course, usually ahead of us, I always saw her as somebody who inspired me to do better, not only on the water, but just in her business acumen and in her volunteerism and her community spirit. So if Martha is listening tonight, I want to say thank you to Martha from me, and congratulations on the interview. I'm going to check it out as soon as we finish up with this conversation. So we are at the end of our time, and I would love just to go around popcorn style and just have, if you have any last thoughts that you would like to share. So in my Hollywood squares, I'm going to start with you, Linda.
Do it. You know, If it's about wanting to be on the water, then do it. If you want to be a photographer, you're going to get a camera. You're going to go online and look up photography and find a photographer and talk to them. It's no different with sailing. And if you want to get better, it's the same path.
That's great advice. Thank you. And so many of the lessons that you learn in sailing are, applicable to any other interest that you may have in life. So that's a great advice. Lynn?
I just don't be afraid to reach out and create the opportunities for yourself. I think someone in the chat was mentioning that it's perceived as sort of a snobby and exclusive club. And I would challenge people to think differently about it, because that's not the norm anymore. There are so many avenues, and just reach out and call, and people will guide you to the right direction.
Thank you for addressing that. I absolutely think you are right. It is much more accessible, and people just need to make that effort to reach out. And Joan?
So I think as a wrap up, I saw in the chat there were a couple of questions about how to keep people into sailing, especially girls, when they hit the social time. It's a social sport, so please try and just bring people out, bring your friends out, go sailing, go get on the water, enjoy, and I look forward to seeing all of us on the water again this summer. Can't wait.
Great. And Deb?
Well, don't forget, get as much training as you can so that you feel confident, but it is a social sport and it is a lifestyle. And I think it's important that, it's one of those things that you can do into old age, really. So to be involved in this, you're going to have your community of sailing friends that will be with you forever. It's a great way to travel. It's a great way to meet people. And it's a great way to give back to others by bringing them in. Just do it.
Great, thank you. And Kim, why don't you bring us home?
Sure. I would say be bold, get out there, make those opportunities and take them. But in answer, I saw the same comments about how do we handle girls, starting to drop out of the sport. Well, it's not just girls, it is girls and boys. And the common theme there is the social aspect. And more often than not, when I look at or talk with a parent who says, my daughter is no longer interested in doing this, it's because maybe we've been tracking, or the family's been tracking that child towards competitive sailing, when in fact, if we get them into a class where it's not about racing, maybe it's about performance sailing, or maybe it's about being on the J22s, but it's where they can engage with their friends and they're associating having fun with the sailing, they're right back in it. It's when if we start just pushing them to say, you've done your beginner, you've done your intermediate, you've done your advanced, next is racing. Well, they may not want the racing at that point in their life. Who knows? They can come back into it and keep racing later. But don't say that just because they don't want to race doesn't mean they don't want to sail, and that they can't enjoy the sport and get a tremendous amount out of it. I would look for different types of sailing experiences for a daughter or a granddaughter who was saying, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Just look at, twisting the opportunity slightly to keep them in the sport, but just engaged in a different way. For those who are very driven to sort of keep learning, keep at it, be bold, be brave, take the opportunities.
Great, thank you. And before I finish up, I just want to say what I heard is that you guys are all welcoming me onto your boats, and I will be calling every one of you and putting up my hand to saying, how can I help on your crew? I'll bring a sandwich if that's what it takes. So thank you again for a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate the time that you all shared with us this evening. As we close out tonight, I just want to thank Emily and Brad and Kim Cooper, who put so much time and effort into making this evening happen and make it a success. So thank you. And I also, of course, just want to thank our sponsors one last time. The presenting sponsor of the Challenger Lecture Series, Hinckley Yachts and Hinckley Yacht Services, and also, of course, our great sponsor of 11th Hour Racing. And I encourage everybody to look for the next Challenger Lecture Series next month. I'm sure it's going to be an extremely interesting conversation. So with that, I will say good night to everybody and thank everybody for attending and asking great questions in the chat as well. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.